Depending on the price of Bitcoin, the U.S. holds roughly just shy of 200,000 Bitcoin. It is the largest state holder, government holder in the world. China roughly has less, and then it quickly falls off after that.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. Are you curious about what's happening in the world of cryptocurrency? I'm Casey Smith. Today I'm joined with Robert Schwarthout, founder, CEO, portfolio manager at Teton Crypto Capital. Every week we bring you practical advice on retirement, investing, and planning for your financial future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Good morning, Robert. Let's get started.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So there's been a lot happening. My little tidbitty, you guys can look that up. The house has the crypto, has the Brave score, crypto news, and then it has the weather at the airport because that's important to me. But Bitcoin's moving a different direction than we thought would happen. But
that's typically how markets work, though, right? When everyone thinks it's going to go one direction, it goes the opposite.
Exactly, and I keep telling everybody it's a 10-year game, so you're only about months into a 10-year investment. That's how you should look at it. So Absolutely. What's happening with, we'll start off with Bitcoin Reserve. I don't know if people caught this in the news or not. Most people probably have no idea what it's about.
Correct. Yeah. It's, I would say of all the things we're going to talk about, this is probably the biggest topic of this whole episode. And this goes back to July of 2024 when Trump talked at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. He promised to set up a Bitcoin reserve. In some sense, this is him fulfilling a campaign promise. Like, we'll kind of get the political part out of the way here and kind of move on to a little bit more of the details. So he did sign an executive order, which immediately the next president could undo. That's how all these things work. Right. But there is a hope that this Bitcoin reserve does get put into law. There's a law in draft form leaving the committee from Senator Loomis that will enshrine it in law. But the whole idea is there's a Bitcoin reserve and there's a digital asset stockpile. These are two different things currently, the way that they're talking about them, and they function a little bit differently. The Bitcoin reserve is currently made up of all the Bitcoin the government currently holds / owns. And this has all come from forfeitures or illegal activities that they've gotten from criminals. The government to date has not bought any Bitcoin. We should be very clear about that. The digital asset stockpile, and they named a couple other tokens, but I think really this is more of a broad bucket that will basically be set up in such a way that anything that is also seized that is not Bitcoin we put into the stockpile: Ethereum, XRP, ADA, Solana. You kind of go down the list. And if any of those are held, the Treasury, which will quote unquote custody this, I don't think they're actually doing the physical custody, but they're the ones in charge of running these, the reserve and the stockpile. At their discretion, they could buy or sell anything in that stockpile. What they do with the funds is kind of a bit up in the air. If you ask the Bitcoin maxis online, they're going to say that it's so you could only buy Bitcoin. That is the way that they're approaching this. But I think there's more details to be fleshed out. I think that's why a law is going to be important to kind of help put some guardrails around this. There's also talk about potentially finding budget neutral ways to buy Bitcoin. I have to admit, this is where my opinion comes in here. I'm not a big fan of having a reserve and a stockpile. I think it should be all one and the same, or I don't understand why we're playing by different rules. It is definitely a lot of lobbying on the back end by the Bitcoin crowd to kind of get this different status because they, in their mind, are digital gold and kind of go with that. But, it's a, you could even back up and, I'm probably still 50-50 whether this should even happen, period. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on whether the U.S. should be holding any crypto?
Well, I guess it depends on what it's being used for. I think having a reserve, not selling it helps crypto because there's so much of it, right? So if they flooded the market with it, right, you could affect the price. I think as a U.S. taxpayer owning the crypto, and the crypto goes where we think it is over the next 10 years, that's probably good for the U.S. taxpayer, right? It's no different than owning half of TikTok, I guess. So maybe having a reserve, it should just be part of the sovereign wealth fund.
you could make a case that it's better fits in that if it's going to be a managed asset, which I think to me it fits better over there. The idea that the U.S. is so also interested in investing. To me, we got to balance the budget first. I mean, this is a very political statement. I get it, but we need to have a balanced budget before we have the idea that we have money to invest. I get that we're currently only holding crypto that has been seized, so we didn't actually have to buy it. But at the end of the day, if you're going to hold this forever, I guess it does help the stability of the dollar a little bit as an asset. But at the end of the day, this is not a income or cash producing vehicle of any kind. These crypto, so it's.
Do we know what the value of the stockpile is currently?
That's a great question. So depending on the price of Bitcoin, the U.S. holds roughly just shy of 200,000 Bitcoin. It is the largest government holder in the world. China roughly has less, and then it quickly falls off after that. The joke recently is the North Korea beat the U.S. to having a Bitcoin stockpile or reserve because the recent ByBit hack, they got $1.6 billion. That's a joke, probably 100% joke. I can't imagine that it's purely for stockpile. I'm sure they will sell it to do something with, but I get that a campaign promise happened here, and as a crypto person, I generally think this is a positive, but I have a lot of questions, and just the way that the news cycle went on this, Trump announced it on a Sunday at 10:30 in the morning. The first the first post he put out on Truth Social was he talked about XRP, Solana, and ADA, not Bitcoin or Ethereum. An hour later, he added, I also truly love Bitcoin and Ethereum. It just seemed off the cuff, and it was just odd.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. If you liquidated everything, it's not enough to balance a budget. So,
right, we're talking. I mean, granted, this is billions of dollars, but yes, our budget is measured in trillions, and this is a bit of a rounding error. So
we're short 2.5 trillion. So if you think about it, I mean, the government still has to have assets, but I don't know. I don't. What does it do for crypto to have a reserve?
I think if you just take politics totally out of this, I think it purely says we've elevated up to having a different level of visibility. The government cares about it. The government's not trying to kill it, and it's willing to, at some level, you could say support it, is the way that I would frame it.
All right. So $18 billion to buy a few votes. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. So, and the price pumped really heavily the day on at least on the tokens that were announced, and then it is pulled back beyond below that in the weeks following. But I think that that's probably a good wrap on that. And it's interesting. They announced the stockpile the week leading into the White House Digital Asset Summit. So that was on a Friday. This was the previous Sunday. So that the Digital Asset Summit was built up as a gathering with the president and industry leaders. In some ways, it was a lot of people that gave money to the Trump campaign. Got to be at the White House, got to sit at the table. That's where Trump he talked about FIFA being part of crypto, and there was a whole bunch of just weird angles to it. At the end of the day, nothing material came out of it, in my opinion. All the news had already happened the 5 days prior, 6 days prior. But, if you would have asked me 2 years ago if the crypto company CEOs and other important people in the industry would be sitting at the White House with the president and it not be because they just got arrested, I wouldn't believe you. So
I don't know.
Times have changed.
This is a little off topic, but does the U.S. even need a sovereign wealth fund? I mean, we have capitalism, right? I go back and forth on that. It's do we really? I mean, we hold gold supposedly. So if we have gold, right, then why wouldn't you have other assets as well? But I don't know that the U.S. needs a sovereign wealth fund. I don't know that we even need to own half of TikTok, to tell you the truth. Maybe the U.S. government gets a broker fee to find the right buyer. But I've
thought a little bit about this, and what I got to was, this is just obviously purely my opinion. At the end of the day, typically the government is an absolute atrocious manager of any sort of money. And do we until we can prove that we can manage better? Do we really need to be giving billions of dollars
Right.
to these type of people? And at the end of the day, maybe the person that's in place now that Trump set up to run the sovereign wealth fund does a decent job, but we have no idea who the next person in charge is going to be. So
sounds like a lot of bad things could happen in the future, but I don't know. I mean, obviously I haven't put that much thought into it. I just know that we don't have Saudi Arabia has a huge sovereign wealth fund, right? But the national resources are oil. And so that's their way of diversifying out of that. In the US, we don't really have that issue. So it kind of goes back to let free enterprise be your thing, because the people here are going to benefit the most from free enterprise than they are getting money handed to them like they do in Saudi Arabia.
Right. And yeah, those Middle Eastern countries with all that oil, if they don't diversify out of oil, they're a one-trick pony. Exactly. And they quickly need to try to figure out how to do something else. And, they're trying to be a financial hub. I mean, they're trying, many of them. The U.S., to your point, already has a bit of diversification. So we will see. I guess we can look back in 10 years and come back to this episode and see how it went. So.
Right.
So I guess we kind of alluded to the Digital Asset Summit here a little bit. A couple points that I think are worth making is at the summit, Trump said that he wanted to have stablecoin legislation done through Congress by August. If that happens, that would be awesome. I'm done playing the game of, we're getting close. It does feel closer than it's ever felt before, but I'm just not playing the guessing game on timing anymore. The bill that is called the Genius Act did get passed at a committee, the banking committee, I believe, this last week. So it is on its way, albeit, Congress is slow at these kind of things, I guess, in relative terms. So it's coming. And that would be the first building block, I think, to truly get regulations for, everything else. You have an SEC, you have a CFTC, you have the OCC and other different organizations that seemingly want to work together all of a sudden on whether it's cryptos or securities or their commodities or there's something else. I think that we're going to end up with multiple baskets. And maybe I can't say it's going to happen this year. I think that's a bit far-fetched, but maybe early next year.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
I saw the headlines for Digital Asset Summit. I think it's funny because you think as an industry person, you go to a conference, you go to a hotel, you have this grand conference room. There might be or a grand hall, right? So there's like 2,000, 3,000 people there. That's what you think about when you think conference or summit, right?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering at the White House, like, how does a summit go at the White House?
Well, that's funny you mentioned this. So I think it was roughly 24 people at this big table.
Right.
But what they did have after that, basically that media event, it was like a 1 or 2 hour thing. And then they went across the street and I think there was a couple hundred people there. But again, everything in DC is all revolves around the politics and a handshaking. Right. I think it's less about summit and learning anything and more about the 15-second news clip that everyone's trying to get. So
right, exactly.
Yeah. So our kind of moving on here, our next topic is the OCC. This one flew under the radar a bit. They came out, they rescinded the Biden era, basically, I wouldn't call it regulation, but decree that banks could not custody crypto. while it wasn't as strict as that, banks could, but the way they had to account for it on their balance sheet made it basically no bank would ever do it. That was one of the angles that the industry was attacked on. But they came back, they rescinded it, and now banks can custody crypto. And surprisingly enough, banks are talking about custodying crypto. Shocker. Here we go. At the end of the day, it's early, but you're already having. I've heard somebody at a conference. I believe it was somebody from JP Morgan and not Citigroup, Goldman talk about their options. At the end of the day, I'm not sure they're going to actually be the custodian. They may just be the interface to the custodian. It may end up at something like a BNY. I know BNY is working on custody. Mm-hmm. And they actually had an exclusion underneath the Biden era stuff. So they had a bit of a head start, but no one really was, my understanding, using it at great scale yet. So we, we're going to kind of get to this in a little bit, but there's a lot of changes happening really quickly. And then we go through periods where nothing changes. And it's sometimes hard to keep up with something as big as this that ends up being small news for the week. So if we kind of jump to a bit of a funny, bizarro world here, Sam Bankman-Fried's in prison. He is still in the Manhattan Detention Center, MDC, and he shares the same cell block as P. Diddy. So we have some very different characters in there. And he somehow, I guess he has a cell phone in prison, or did, but he did a roughly a 30-minute interview with Tucker Carlson on Zoom. Where Tucker just sat there and interviewed him. I watched it, and it seems like a totally legit thing. Like it was planned, like it was set up. The camera's clear. Mm-hmm. So this post online, and within, I think, hours, if not the next day, he was put in solitary confinement because he did an illegal interview from prison.
Oh my gosh!
And the crazy thing about this,
how did you get a phone to begin with? Who knows what happened?
I mean, how did they get drugs in jail? I don't know. I'm experienced in this, so I can't really answer your question. But they went through a wide ranging topics. I
didn't even know this story. So was he pleading for a pardon?
So one of the questions Tucker asked him was did you reach out to see if you could get a pardon or anything? He's like, Sam, you always have to take everything he's saying with a grain of salt. But he was like, no, I didn't try to use that angle because I didn't feel like it was right. I'm like, all of a sudden you're feeling like you know what's right. But he talked about the future of crypto under Trump. Does SBF have any money left? They talked about the altruistic cult that he was a part of effectively. Yeah. It was a bit wide ranging, albeit roughly 40, 45 minutes. And he even talked about P. Diddy a little bit. So it's pretty crazy. But what the internet is awesome at. So I watched this interview. A day or so later, somebody had dug up a document that was shared as part of the bankruptcy proceedings for FTX. And there was a Google Doc that Sam had that if he ever got in trouble, these were the things he would do to try to get out of trouble. And no joke, one of the things on it was he would go on Tucker Carlson to appeal to the right.
Oh, wow. He's just going down his list.
He's functionally going down his list. I was like, man, this guy is just so orchestrated. Anyways, it kind of, this is something to laugh at. There's nothing serious going on here, but
20 years, I think, or something like that.
20, 25 years. So they did talk about he would be in his late 50s when he got out. How do you feel about that? And he was a bit somber in that moment. Prison ages you quicker than the average person. So, right. That's functionally like being in your 70s probably. So,
right. That's
we'll see. Our next topic.
Any of his cohorts end up in prison? Remember
no one else.
No one else did?
No. Some people, well, or maybe it was very light sentences. I forget the exact details, but some people pled out with a fine only, or major fines, millions of dollars, or there was a few, I think some community service, but maybe some with a couple of years. But even Caroline, basically number 2 there, I don't think, since she was basically ratted him out.
Yeah.
Didn't rat him out. He did it himself, but she basically talked to the government and spilled the beans. So,
but then you have C over
CZ.
Yeah. So what? I don't see that on your list today, but
yeah.
Basically he's getting cleared by Trump.
So I did send you that. It obviously is not in our notes here, but CZ was the ex CEO of Binance. He started Binance.
Right.
Binance was doing money laundering and some bad stuff. They weren't doing good AML and KYC effectively, and so CZ went to jail for 4 to 6 months. He is out. He is seemingly on the right side of the law at this point, and but. There was a rumor floated that the Trump family was trying to buy part of Binance and CZ was trying to get a pardon. I'm like, okay, this seems highly suspect from both angles. CZ came out and said, I am not selling part of Binance and I'm not looking for pardon. All of this was on the heels of a family from Abu Dhabi basically putting $2 billion in Binance. That was a legitimate news. That happened. Then all of a sudden it looked like the Trump family was trying to tag along. And I was like, I want crypto to be taken seriously, but we cannot have this kind of crap happening if it's going to be taken seriously. So it does not appear to be, but we will see.
He got off pretty easy, in my opinion, especially the money laundering is going to really bad things. So he got a break.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's that bit. The next one is kind of a bit more up your alley. So the Nasdaq has announced that they are looking in early 2026 to launch 24-hour trading. I don't know if it's 24/7 trading, but it's 24-hour trading. And the first thing that popped in my mind was like, oh, duh, we're just going to tokenize all this on the blockchain and make it easy. I don't know if that's exactly the news item, but the news cycle, we're trying to bury news at 5 p.m. after the markets close seems to be that window seems to be closing. So
if you launch your company with Nasdaq with 24-hour trading, do you also get free Red Bull and coffee for life?
Yeah. I did see it's not in the notes here, but Nasdaq is opening up a second headquarters down in I think Austin or somewhere in Texas. That'll be open early next year too. So maybe that's kind of all wrapped together. I haven't seen anything actually tying it, but I did wonder that. So
my first question to that is, how do you keep the volume up to be able to do 24-hour trading? Because in the markets, like on the NYSE, the stocks don't open all at once. The stock market opens at 9:30, but it takes about 10 to open up every single station, every single company, right? And by 10, most things are trading. By 11:30, that's like the optimal time to be trading if you're doing anything that has something to do with foreign securities. That's more related to ETFs. But you have supply demand all day long, right? How do you it's like you'd have to have like peak hours. And that, in NASDAQ you have, or NYSE, you also have after hours trading or pre-market trading. That's, a small window. I just wonder how you maintain the volume for buys and sells. It's computers that are obviously doing it, but you have to have somebody on the other end hitting buy, submit. So I bet you there would have to be at 3:00 in the morning. It's probably not the best time to be selling your stock. That's all I'm saying.
You would think the volumes or the liquidity would be low, but
you'd have to get the world to buy in. Like you need other people from other countries that when we're sleeping, Asia, you need them to be able to trade on that exchange. I don't know the rules on that. I'm thinking that it's not as easy as us as a citizens placing trades, and also it sounds like a great way to get your markets manipulated when everyone else is sleeping.
Yes, absolutely.
I just have a lot of questions about that.
What I wondered is like, and I don't know the answer. What percentage of the current volume is this like computers doing the trading, like AI or
NASDAQ? I think it's all computers.
Right. Well, I know it's like physically done with computers or electronically done, but is it algorithmic trading? Like is like actually a person clicking buy or sell, or is it actually done with computers? Because if it's done with computers, they can go 24/7. So
it's true. That's true. I don't know. I have so many questions with that. I mean, you think about, there's times when weird things happen. Like I remember at a business lunch, and I was at business lunch in New York, and in the amount of time that it took me to have an hour and a half lunch with somebody, I came out, we had the flash crash. And imagine having a flash crash at 2:00 in the morning. What are you gonna do? I mean, you're sleeping, you don't know, someone's gonna call you, wake you up, your phone's buzzing because all these alerts are going off. with stock prices. I don't know. I understand why they'd want to do it because now it's 24 hours of revenue. So
yes.
You're getting a half a penny or a penny a trade. Now you can do this 24 hours a day.
Right.
Generate revenue for the exchange. But I just don't understand why it's worth the risk. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
7 a.m. to 10 p.m. sounds great.
Yeah. As someone in crypto that has 24/7, 365 trading, the idea that you have to be woken up in the middle of the night just seems normal. So I'm having trouble sympathizing.
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah. Anyways, so we can move on. So, kind of a bit of a recap. So like I kind of said it a bit ago, there's weeks when decades happen. And that's really what the last week or the week of this news, this is roughly 2-week-old news. But it's just kind of crazy when you kind of look at the list, again, strategic Bitcoin reserve, the digital asset stockpile, the OCC allowed banking in the system, the crypto summit, SEC dismissed more enforcement actions against Kraken and some others. The Senate voted to kill the IRS broker rule, which we didn't even talk about. That's a big deal. And I can also say, since we literally started recording, the SEC and Ripple just announced they dropped the case. So that is a big news thing. I don't know the details there, so I don't want to say too much. We'll probably pick that up in our next episode. But it's
that's like equivalent to like Ukraine and Russia saying, "Yeah, we're not going to fight anymore." If you think about the destruction that took place during that
hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees that we'll never get back from both sides, effectively.
Yeah,
it was not productive. What will be interesting to follow up on is like, what are they doing about the $125 million fine that Ripple was supposed to pay? Are they still paying that? They're not going forward, or what the deal is? But again, we got more homework to do. We'll talk about that next time, I'm sure.
Right. Interesting. That's big news. I think that covers it. So that's cool. Thanks for doing this with us. This is definitely the future. I think we should do an episode in the future on use case scenarios, because I feel like there are more use cases now.
We're starting to get close to what that actually is allowed to happen, right? Regulations, stablecoins. Yes, I think education will start to be more important and something that's you can point to that actually is happening versus this could happen.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
All right. That's cool. Thanks, Robert. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced by Rachel Dotson. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.